The Magen David, or the Star of David, is today by far the most common symbol associated with the Jewish religion. The Hebrew word Magen David means shield of David, and you will find people commonly saying that the reason is that King David had a shield in this shape, or maybe with this symbol engraved upon it. And that would seem to indicate that the origin of the Star of David goes back 3,000 years to the biblical King David. You'll find others going further and saying that the symbol has deep symbolism, with the 6 points representing the 6 days of creation and the empty space in the middle representing the 7th day of Shabbat. And some will even give the star esoteric meaning, saying that the 6 points of the star symbolize the 6 Kabbalistic sefirot of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, while the middle space represents the 7th attribute of Malchut. And I'm going to drop in the notes on this video some links to different articles that discuss some of the symbolism, both exoteric and esoteric, that are attributed to this symbol by different people. On the other hand, if you peruse the dark corners of the internet, you'll find those who claim that the Star of David is an occult symbol with various meanings, sometimes pagan, sometimes even nefarious. So what is the truth about this symbol, the Star of David? I'd like to do a short historical survey with you of the history of this star as a symbol of the Jewish religion. Some try to demonstrate the antiquity of this symbol by pointing out that we find it in a few instances of ancient archaeology. For example, there was a Hebrew seal found from the Iron Age with ancient Hebrew writing on it, and a 6-pointed star that we today call the Star of David. Also, as a tour guide, I can tell you that sometimes they take people to the ancient synagogue at Capernaum on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and there you can find a decorative capital that stood upon one of the columns of the synagogue that has the Star of David engraved upon it. And you'll always see the tour guides lined up there explaining to their groups that this is somehow evidence of the great antiquity of this symbol as a Jewish symbol. But the truth is that all the evidence indicates that the star had no ritual Jewish significance at that time. It was simply a common geometrical design that was used by artisans of all nationalities in those times. And in that sense, it was no different than the compass rose, the pentagram, or even the swastika that was commonly used all throughout antiquity and even in ancient synagogues. The truth is that in antiquity, the symbols of the Jewish people were biblical symbols like the shofar, the lulav, or the menorah. And we can find them in ancient Jewish homes, synagogues, and on coins minted by the Hasmoneans and other Jewish kings from the time. So the question is, how and when did this star take on a uniquely Jewish connotation? To gain insight into this, I want to refer you to an essay called The Curious History of the 6-Pointed Star by the late Professor Gershom Scholem from the Hebrew University. And there he traces the origins of this symbol from early antiquity into modern times. I've referenced the article in the notes on this video, and I highly recommend reading it in full if you want a thorough survey of the history of this symbol. In short, the earliest instances of attributing symbolism to the 6-pointed star seem to go back to medieval magical practices, especially the practice of magical protective amulets. These amulets were extremely common among Christians, Muslims, and Jews at those times. It was believed that carrying amulets inscribed with various symbols and names of God could protect one from harm and bring success in one's endeavors. Since the art of creating these amulets was generally the realm of folk healers and not theologians, there was a lot of cross-germination of ideas and symbols between the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim practitioners of these magical arts. One of the common elements in these amulets were symbols called seals or shields, because they protected the bearer from evil spirits. In the Middle Ages, there were many such symbols, but eventually the 5 and 6-pointed stars became known alternatively as the seal of Solomon and the seal of David. At first, these terms were used interchangeably for either star, but eventually it became more common, especially among Christians, to call the 5-pointed star the seal of Solomon and the 6-pointed star the seal or the shield of David. So how did the star go from being a magical talisman used by Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike to becoming the universal symbol of Judaism? To understand this, we must go back to the 14th century to the Jewish community of Prague. In 1354, Emperor Charles V gave the Jews freedom to bear their own flag as a token of his grace to the Jews of the city. This was a matter of great pride for the often persecuted and marginalized Jews of the time. The flag that was chosen bore a large shield of David. It's not clear if the Jews designed their own flag or if it was chosen for them by the emperor, who may have chosen it for its decorative quality or because of its widespread magical use. But in any case, the flag was flown with pride by the Jews of Prague for centuries, and the symbol it bore became associated with the Jewish community there. Apparently, the authorities of the state had no less respect for the flag than the Jews, since in 1716, they actually fined the elders of the Jewish community for not taking proper care of it and allowing it to be damaged. Over time, Hungarian Jews began using the star on tombstones, synagogue structures, and seals of Jewish societies. From Prague, the use of the symbol spread over time to Jewish communities in Vienna, Moravia, Bohemia, and other Western Ashkenazi Jewish communities. But remarkably wide diffusion of the Shield of David only began in the 19th century. This was a time of Jewish emancipation in several European countries. The Jewish ghettos were open, and the doors of secular education and society were open to the Jews of Europe for the first time. The newly emancipated Jews began to build their synagogues to rival the grand churches and cathedrals of their Christian neighbors, and they needed a recognizable symbol to place at the peak of the domes and spires of their synagogues to take the place of the cross that was featured atop the churches. They naturally chose the Star of David, the symbol which had represented the Jewish community for hundreds of years. From here, the path was paved for the star to become ubiquitous as a symbol used on Kiddush cups, mezuzot, and anything Jewish. When the state of Israel was established, it was only natural to use the star on the flag of the newly reborn state. Today, you will find many articles attributing deep Kabbalistic meaning to the star, but the fact is that the star is not mentioned in the Zohar, which is the magnum opus of Kabbalah. It isn't mentioned in the works of Rabbi Isaac Luria, known as the Arizal, or any of the other great Kabbalists. These explanations only arose in modern time as an attempt to explain the widespread use of this symbol by Jewish people. Now, that doesn't mean that these explanations are necessarily wrong. We Jews believe in hashgacha pratit, divine providence, and we believe that God orchestrates the events of human history. And a case could certainly be made that if God brought it about that this symbol is universally recognized as representing Judaism, it cannot be by accident. And so it's perfectly legitimate to look for symbolism and deeper meaning in this symbol. But it's worth noting that most Hasidic and other ultra-Orthodox communities refrain from using this symbol because it's not directly derived from Jewish tradition. So do I use the Star of David? It depends what you mean. I don't buy ritual items like talit bags or Kiddush cups with the Star of David on it. I prefer to use symbols that are firmly rooted in the Torah. But I am a citizen of the modern state of Israel, and in that sense, I'm happy to use the star as a national symbol of the country that I live in, just as others use the flags and symbols of their countries. So that's a little bit about the history of the Star of David. I hope I answered some of your questions. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and follow to get more videos like this. I want to thank Teresa Serna from our community at LearnHebrew.tv for suggesting this topic, and you can find the link below to join our Learn Hebrew community, where we discuss Hebrew, Israel, and the Hebrew Bible. And I will also place the link to the article by Professor Gershom Scholem and some of the other articles that I mentioned. God bless you. Shalom.